Hello and welcome to the Celtic Skys Sky Update, your guide to what's happening in the night sky over the coming month. If you know little or nothing about astronomy and you don't own a telescope or binoculars, but would still like to know what is going on in the universe around us, then this video is for you. Sometimes I may use a term or introduce a phrase that you're unfamiliar with. If I don't give any further explanations, you will see the letter I and this text box appear in the top corner of the video screen. Simply click this and you will see a drop-down menu with some further explanation videos that you can watch. By simply running a cursor over the top corner of the screen, you can access this menu at any time. This month we will be focusing on various aspects of our nearest neighbour, the Moon. We'll be looking at the regular lunar events, how the Moon moves through the sky. I will discuss the Penumbral eclipse, which is occurring in February. And finally, we will have a quick look at some of the planets that are to be seen. And so, without further ado, let's crack on. The Moon will go through its various phases this month on the following dates. On the 4th of February, you will see the Moon in its first quarter phase. On the 11th of February, the full Moon will light up the night sky. On the 18th of February, we'll see the third quarter, and we will have a new Moon on February 26th. Because the Moon moves in an elliptical path around the Earth, its distance from us varies over the month. On the 6th of February, it will be at the point of perigee when it's at its closest point to the Earth, and it will be just under 369,000 kilometers away from us. But on the 18th of February, it will be at the point of apogee, its furthest point, when it will be over 35,000 kilometers further away from our planet.
It can be difficult to work out where the Moon will be in any given night in the sky. This is because we are contending with the motions of two bodies. The first motion is the spinning of the Earth around its axis. As you know, the Earth spins around an axis, and this axis points to the North Star, and thus it looks like the stars and the planets and the Moon are moving across the sky, when in fact it's the Earth that is moving. And because the axis points to the North Star, it appears not to move at all, while all other bodies appear to move around it. The stars closest to the North Star never go below the horizon, but move in a circumpolar path around the North Star. The paths of bodies further away from the North dip below the horizon. Therefore, they are seen to rise from below the horizon up into the sky, descending again to set in the west. This effect can be clearly seen if we set a camera on long exposure at night pointed towards the North Star. We get star trails in the sky which display the path travelled by all objects through to the sky. You can clearly see the circular motion of the celestial bodies around the North Star, which is the middle of the circular trails. The movement of all these bodies, including the Moon, is in an east-west direction at a pace of about 1 degree every 4 minutes. The sky is 180 degrees wide from east to west. For the Moon, there is a second motion, and that motion is its orbit around the Earth. This motion has the effect that the Moon, as well as moving slowly from east to west with all other bodies, is also moving at an even slower pace from west to east against the backdrop of the stars. Therefore, the Moon's position relative to the rest of the celestial bodies is constantly changing. This movement is very difficult to see on any given night because it is so slow, half a degree per hour. We just cannot detect the rate of movement normally. But when the moon is very close to another bright object, it is possible to detect this motion relative to the position of the nearby bright object. On the 5th of February, the moon will be very close to a bright star called Aldebaran in the constellation Taurus. At about 5 to 10, if you look up at the moon, you'll see Aldebaran just to the north of the moon. And about a half an hour later, you will notice that the star is now to the northeast of the moon. And after another half hour, it's located just off the eastern lunar edge. This change in the moon's position to Aldebaran is as a result of the moon's slow journey around the Earth against the backdrop of the stars, and this is an excellent opportunity to see this movement with the naked eye.
As the light from the sun passes by the Earth casts a dark shadow into space. Where the sun is completely blocked, there is a dark shadow called the umbra, and this is surrounded by a lighter shadow called the penumbra. If we could see the shadow, which we can't, cast it into space, it would look like a dark circle surrounded by a lighter circle. Now, the moon normally passes below or above this shadow, but sometimes we can see or detect the shadow when the moon passes through it. So if the moon passes through the darkest part of the shadow, this is a full lunar eclipse, and the light of the moon is seen to dim significantly. Other times the moon will simply pass through the penumbra region. We will still detect a darkening of the moon, but the effect can be quite light. Now, in February there is a penumbral eclipse taking place. On the 9th of February the 10th, at approximately 25 to 11, the moon will enter the penumbral region of the Earth's shadow. It will be another hour before we can detect the darkening of the face significantly with the naked eye. By about 1:45 the following morning, it will be as deep into the penumbral shadow as it will get, and the moon will be at its darkest for this eclipse, and it will exit the penumbral part of the shadow by about 5 to 3 in the morning. As the diagram here shows, the effect will be quite light. There'll be a light reddening or browning of the moon towards the northern part, as the southern tip of the moon actually doesn't enter the penumbral shadow. If there's any degree of cloud at all, especially in city areas, this effect will be very, very hard to detect. But if it's a clear night and you're up for a late observation and you've nothing happening the next morning, it could be interesting to go and see this lunar eclipse. On the 1st of February, you will have an opportunity to identify two planets with the naked eye, Venus and Mars. Venus is easily identifiable because it is the brightest object in the sky after the moon and the sun, and it's about 16 degrees to the right of the moon, and they're both well placed high in the sky, high enough at least for most people to see. Now, if it's a relatively clear night, look out for a small reddish looking star about halfway, well, it's a little closer to Venus, between the moon and Venus, and this is the planet Mars. And there was a similar sight, though in a different order, last month, and I took a photo just with a camera, no telescope, and I could pick up Venus, the moon, and Mars. Now, it's hard to see Mars in this photo here, but if I zoom in there, it really is there, and in fact it's easier to see with the naked eye. So it's worth having a go this month to identify the planet Mars. On February 14th, the moon acts as a good indicator for finding Jupiter. which is only separated from the Moon by about 7 degrees. It's about 25 degrees up from the horizon, so it should be a good height, and therefore you should have no problems in identifying Jupiter. Now, interestingly enough, on the following night, on the 16th, the Moon and Jupiter are still separated by about 7 degrees, but this time the Moon is to the left of Jupiter. So you have two opportunities to identify the planet Jupiter, but also, quite interestingly, it gives you a good indication of how much the Moon travels in 24 hours against the backdrop of the other stars and planets. And that's it for this month. I hope you enjoyed our journey through the February skies and found it informative. The aim of these guides is to try and promote an interest in science through astronomy. Therefore, please feel free to pass the link to my Sky Update video channel to anyone who you think might be interested. So until next month's update, I wish you clear skies.